Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Above the Haze. Eric Postal here. I'm an attorney representing the cannabis industry. With me today, Jacquie Cohen Roth, founder, CEO, CannabizMD, TeaPad, and the nonprofit TeaPad Foundation. Additionally, Jacquie is an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. Jacquie, thank you so much for being with me today. Welcome to Above the Haze.
Thanks, Eric. I'm very excited about this opportunity and grateful. So ready to go.
Awesome. Well, let's just start by diving into you. I love to hear from our guests how they got to now. You've got a really interesting background and your own personal narrative. How is it that you ended up in the cannabis industry doing all the interesting things that you are doing? Where did that begin?
I think that might take up the entirety of our conversation. So I've got to figure out how to
Sound bites. Sound bites will work.
I would say, like many of us in the industry, a personal connection. My first taste of weed was when I was 13. Dabbled a little bit in high school. I've been part of the legacy industry myself for a period of time. College use, and with that was also what intellectually what I love to study, and where it all has come together for me in the cannabis industry is I was pre-med biology for a bit, ended up graduating with a double major in economics and policy studies, a minor in international political economies. And then while I was raising my kids, I studied architecture. And believe it or not, that as a whole, all come together in this industry. I've made it come together for myself. And so the missing piece that I had, certainly, and then I have that background in conventional healthcare as well, where I had a company for about 20 years before I fully pivoted into medical cannabis.
When you go from this starting out as a consumer, dabbling in it, legacy, things like that you described. Why do you think that it was important for you to continue on with the plan? What kind of draw was there?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, and I do think about it. Is that one is that personally, for me, I have a holistic approach to healthcare. I mean, having come from the conventional healthcare space, certainly understand the benefits as well as the harms of conventional or traditional medicine. While I raised a family of 3 daughters that I refer to now as grown-ass human beings, and very conscientious of what vaccines they were given, and and how they were treated. And then what I raised them with was mommy spices were in the freezer. And so fast forward 30 years, while in graduate school, I learned so much and what I was self-medicating for. And so that's pulling that in personally. So seeing how the plant personally impacted me. I have lost my mother, my father, and my sister to cancer. And so what their lives or deaths could have been like had they had access to cannabis. I'm also, there's certainly that renegade in me. So, this is illegal. Let's see what we can do with this, and push boundaries there, make things happen. I'm a civil rights activist.
I hear you. I hear you. Civil disobedience, I guess.
Yeah.
But I want to key in on what you just said. You have a family history of cancer. Sadly, both your parents and your sister passed away from it. But you just said that it could have been different with medicinal cannabis.
Yes.
Now, you don't mean to say that medicinal cannabis would have cured their cancer, do you?
No. Like eating, is that while patients are suffering through the effects of radiation and chemotherapy, and I just remember my mom, and she was living on Ensure. I mean, who wants to live their last days on Ensure? Had she
So
had
it's about that wellness, quality of life thing.
Quality of death.
Quality of death.
Quality of death. And with my sister, remarkably enough, or I guess ironically enough, is that she was living with my oldest sister um, outside of Santa Barbara, California, and she had a hankering for Taco Bell, and she was dying. I mean, that was what was happening, and so we went to Taco Bell, and she got so sick after that, and I'm not saying had she had some medical cannabis, you would have that alleviated, but likely that there would have been some therapeutic benefits to, again, for allow them to eat what they wanted to do, provide some energy. Certainly, I mean, this is the challenge with the industry that we have is, yeah, it might have made an impact on their cancer.
Hmm. Hmm. And now since then, and having worked professionally and particularly in the medical space,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching in a school of pharmacy, that's not the school of cannabis, that's the school of pharmacy.
Right.
What is your takeaway now from the medicinal side? It's a Schedule 1 narcotic with no
Correct.
medicinal value and propensity for abuse. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes. Yeah. And so that's the
It's accurate
challenge.
to say there's no medicinal value?
That is per Schedule 1 through the CSA, the Controlled Substances Act. So that's the definition.
Yeah.
That the National Academies of Science says something different. That was published in 2017, and in that book, recognized that cannabis does have value of treating chronic pain. And actually, that segues into my relationship with the School of Pharmacy. Is that so? I had launched CannabizMD late 2017, just as Maryland's medical cannabis program went live in December 2017. And so I had this platform, knew the graduate program at the School of Pharmacy was in development coming down the pike. And I had the opportunity to interview the Dean Natalie Eddington. And she shared really powerful story of what she went through to establish the first graduate program in medical cannabis science in the U.S. and actually across the globe. But Maryland's Attorney General called her up, and the original plan for the program was it was going to be plant touching. And he called her up and said, hey, if you continue with this program as you've designed it, you personally will be arrested for drug trafficking.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, the story is common in the industry that you meet resistance, but change comes over time. But I'm more interested in your view of the medicinal value of the plant. When we're calling it a Schedule 1, when we're
Correct.
saying there's no medicinal value, does the data support that, or do we have it wrong?
Well, Carrick, who are the we? When you say we're having
Well, these are the
it,
federal laws of
yeah,
our country. We're Americans, so
yeah.
we the people, these are our laws, and we could choose to change it, right?
Well, that's a federal law. And so, as 38 states have demonstrated, and that the majority of Americans, per the Pew reports, that say they believe that medical cannabis, and they demonstrate that medical cannabis does have value.
Yeah.
So there are a number of studies that demonstrate that cannabis absolutely has value. There are studies that are published certainly around the world that demonstrate that there are medical benefits of cannabis. I always say cannabis is not benign. Like any drug medication, you have to measure the risks and harms, as well as the potential therapeutic benefits.
Absolutely. And as more studies are coming out, I think the Mayo Clinic just came out and said something positive about the medicinal value of cannabis. Um, does it become a hill that the federal government, as it's currently doing, as Congress, the legislative functions of our country, is it a hill they can continue to hold?
Well, yeah, I had a conversation with one of the C-suite guys in MSO exactly on this point. Is where I'm coming from the perspective of certainly the value of the medical benefits, and that where the industry, this is where the conversation came from, is that the industry is crying the blues. I mean, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but is without going off again on a tangent of what's going on in the industry, but I think smart money industry is you focus on those products that you're marketing, that we know that they have therapeutic benefit. Folks, like, I'm literally the silver tsunami. We are the largest population. We're the fastest growth population of cannabis patients and cannabis consumers. So here's this unique market opportunity, but particularly a market need.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, I want to pivot a little bit away from the policy side and into the real world.
Yeah.
As you go out there, you're meeting so many people through your various organizations. What beyond the medicinal? What is the social value, the communal value of this plant, cannabis sativa L?
Yeah. There's nothing like, literally smoking the peace pipe, right? That those of us, that are in the industry, but the social value, I mean, beyond, making a light joke like that, is that the impact that legalization is having and social equity measures that are truly life changing, community changing. And so I'm a civil rights activist. So the Hebrew principle upon which all of my organizations are built is Tikkun Olam, a Hebrew principle which literally means repair the world. So how I'm doing it best is focusing on filling the void of cannabis science and education opportunity, as well as providing opportunity to get that education. And so with that, where TeaPad is, for example, TeaPad is particularly focused on advancing women and people of color in cannabis STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So providing those opportunities for folks either to get into the industry as a trimmer or a dispensary attendant, to have access to education, that's the game changer. So I think that's the tremendous social aspect.
I think that's incredibly important. And one of the things that I'm trying to draw out here is beyond the medicine, beyond the use, there are social benefits that are felt by people who are not even touching the plant. The economic driver that is a cannabis business in many parts of the country where business and industry left is repopulating those old abandoned factories and warehouses. Now you sprinkle in some of the social things that have been going on for hundreds of years in this country that we're also accounting for, and that's positive. That's positive as well. But I think it's worth talking about broadly. There's the consumption of this product, and then there's the social aspects of this plant. And it's well beyond what effect it has on the consumer. Wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to, with your question, is steer away from the social aspect of people getting together and, and what that all is, and, almost a ceremonial or spiritual experience, but more so when you talked about in the communities. Actually, I'm partnering with one of my grad school friends and colleagues on workforce development grants. They're called an EARN grant. And Maryland is really unique, is that it's the only state that offers these grants. And they are very specific to developing workforce. So it's hospitality, biotech, engineering. I'm trying to think of the other of industry verticals. But so we're going to collaborate. She has a grant in place on trimmers. And so her building I drove up and I visited her the other day. I'm coming on the grant to support her in delivering an introduction to policy and law. And so that folks understand that the regulations that are in place, talk about the federal, what it is specifically, what you need to know about working in Maryland, what, in order to be employed by the industry, what that looks like. But in any event, so these are the spaces that are opportunities to, they're called blue sky spaces, where literally the tops of the buildings don't exist. that, they've just been ignored. And so there are spots in Baltimore that to revitalize the community. And not only are you developing and providing education, but you're creating jobs.
Mm. Amen. Amen. Yeah, I think that part of this narrative development, part of this the emerging value of this show for me is that we get to talk about those things that sometimes just feels like it gets lost. We're talking about Delta 9 and Delta 8 and different and terpenes and profiles and all this stuff, and we stop talking about, well, let's move beyond what the plant is doing and think about the industry, the community around it.
Mm-hmm.
And is that something that we want to encourage?
Oh, 100%. Yesterday I had this amazing day. I love what I do. Yeah, there are definitely assholes. And that's really unfortunate. And I have an issue going on with a company right now that thinks it's okay not to pay me per our contract, so that happens, unfortunately. But for the most part, this industry is full of folks who, recognize, again, there's a legacy industry that's part of this. It's, we're built upon the legacy industry as well as advocacy. And the gay community in California that advocated so hard to legalize medical cannabis, and what those folks are like, to the mothers who advocate for the children. That's the foundation of this industry. And so, I never lose sight of that. I want people to recognize it, not to lose sight of that. And with that, we have folks that I say, they're, for the most part, the smartest and the kindest people that I've ever worked for. We're very like-minded. We're here to make change. This is kind of one of those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities that, we are, as medical cannabis was a medicine in the late 19th century and into the early 20th century, is to bring it back.
Yeah.
And, to make sure.
And for thousands of years before that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And then this is, to do it then I get on my public health soapbox is, to underscore, the necessity for people to buy in a regulated market. Actually I've got something, trank that I want to raise awareness of, the next, deadly pharmaceutical, animal or veterinary medicine, to appear in, street drugs.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole show just about is marijuana a gateway drug or to more drugs, or a gateway drug away from drugs?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I would say the latter. And if it becomes a gateway to drugs, it's the shit that people are putting in it.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting point altogether. All right, crystal ball.
Yes.
Where are we as a community, as an industry, 5 years from now?
Yes. Yeah, that's a tough one. Actually, the crystal ball. Start off, I am the eternal optimist, more than a glass half full person. In 5 years, we are going to have federal legalization of medical cannabis. I do believe that. I would like to see Schedule 3, which means that safe banking goes away. There's no issue. There are safeguards in place to ensure, just like any other piece of healthcare, that there's safe access, there's readable access. Physicians are educated. Physicians, there's a data point that I use that we have. If every state legalizes medical cannabis, we're now at 38 states. That's a very conservative number of 9 million. Meanwhile, less than 9% of all medical schools include medical cannabis science in their education. So there is this tremendous void. If we talk about the illicit market, 100% of Americans have access to cannabis. So highly likely a healthcare provider, a physician, has a patient in their practice. But what they're doing is they're asking their patients, hey, what did the bud tender tell you? And that's just, as I say, backwards.
I hear you. That makes a lot of sense.
And so with federal legalization, we will have our physicians and healthcare providers educated as they need to be and should
I
be.
like that vision. One thing that kind of is coming up for me is the word. I'm really interested in the way words are used, and primarily how words are used to limit things, right? Vice expand them. And I think it's important to spend time thinking about the word medicine. Medicine in Western culture means something dramatically different than in indigenous culture. And
Correct.
cannabis as a plant medicine, um, once you comprehend it from the plant medicine indigenous perspective in many ways, you start to understand it differently, and you start to understand medicine differently. You move away from pharmaceutical, you move away from powerful narcotics, and more into wholeness, wellness, or organic plant sustenance. I don't know how to describe it beyond that, but does that trigger anything in you? Just thinking about it, the word medicine.
Oh, well, 100%. I mean, just as you said, cannabis has been used as medicine for 5,000 years. When my initial largest business that I launched was Mojo Media. And we're publishing a magazine for physicians and healthcare stakeholders in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region. And policy and law, innovation, best practices, no matter the size, whether it was a health system to a private practice, healthcare information technology was brand new. This was a requirement of CMS for physicians to have electronic health records be part of the practice, all of that. So in any event, but while I launched that publication in 2004, medical cannabis had been legalized in California, pretty sure in 1996. And I was watching what was happening, of course, with my personal relationship with cannabis, and then as well as being a policy geek and a healthcare geek, that it's moving its way across from the West. It's going to be coming to the East Coast. And so in my magazine, a couple times a year, we would have a special section on adjunctive therapies, introducing this concept of the benefits of acupuncture, the benefits of medical cannabis, recognizing that my audience is very conservative. My father was a physician. My sister's an orthopedics physician, told me not to go into this industry. That's another fun story. But, it was necessary. So I think is that for cannabis, again, it's not benign. It doesn't work for everybody. Physicians need to be educated. We need to go beyond the dispensary attendant. Particularly, we need public health education, far improved, in adult use markets, where there is no healthcare provider as part of that transaction. And, you've got somebody who, by law, with state regulations, has had some version of medical cannabis or some version of cannabis education. What I say, compliance and enforcement are other considerations.
Nailed it. I really appreciate your insight. Last topic. If you could describe your experience and the industry as you see it right now in one word, what word are you going with?
Oh my gosh. Wow. I mean, immediately the word that came to me was balls out. It is. I have so many things going on. I have been blessed with a shit ton of energy. My goal is to use it for greater good than evil. I haven't killed anybody yet, so we're good. And I am focused on making change. I have a very personal story of what cannabis as a patient means to me that I haven't shared. I think about, like, at some point I got to write this book. It's decades and this was one of the outcomes of going to graduate school. One particularly course was my favorite. It was an advanced therapeutics course where we focused a lot on neuropsychiatry, and I learned so much about mental health disease. And so, it's to recognize that the power of the plant, what it can do for people, the power of advocacy, how it is, just as I said, tikkun olam, to repair the world. There were some things that I work really hard on recognizing there's so much that I can't control, but what can I do? After my mom died and I worked through the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, one of the takeaways there was the greatest cure for grief is action. And I took that to heart. And, what can I do to change?
Yeah.
To change the world.
Bring good to the world, right? And to call it what it is. I mean, this is bringing good to the world. There's so much stigma out there. There's so much misinformation and misunderstanding and just lacking of awareness in general about all the different facets here. And at the end of the day, you're not bringing harm into the world. You're bringing good into the world. And look around us. Look at all the harm that's just happening on a daily basis. And now microcosm it with cannabis.
Right.
That the harm?
Right. And what's interesting, and part of this conversation is of late in the last 2 weeks, I have received email message or a Facebook message, people who wouldn't return an email prior to me, prior to whatever we were working on. But now I do hear from them is, oh, my grandmother, she's been in a lot of pain, and do you have recommendations on a product and what she could do? Or, my best friend is going through cervical cancer and blah, 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 blah. What do you recommend? And, so my message back is I only treat family members. Thank you so much for your interest in medical cannabis and that you seem to understand the value of the benefits. And here's somebody that I recommend they work with.
Yeah. Right on.
So it's changing. And so we're, definitely impacting, as I said, the majority of Americans want to have access to medical cannabis. And to that question about what's my crystal ball is, if you want to get elected at some point, wake up and make sure that there is smart, safe cannabis federal policy in place.
Amen. Jacquie Cohen Roth, thank you so much for joining me today on Above the Haze. And for everyone else, tune in next time to another episode of Above the Haze.
Great. It was terrific, Eric. Thanks so much.